Evelyn, you still haven't found a job.
She's just on a life sabbatical.
Madeline, don't say it like that.
I'm just kidding. Who knows? Maybe she's hacking for the government.
Sunday mornings at the brunch spot, the Garden Loft in the historic district of Savannah, Georgia, were always the time when families gathered, told stories, and laughed together. But that morning, Evelyn Carter didn't laugh. She sat in her usual seat in the small corner near the window, where the morning sunlight filtered through the leaves and cast shadows on the cold coffee she kept stirring unconsciously. She didn't do it because she wanted to drink, but because it was the only thing keeping her hands busy, while her mind silently endured the invisible stabs of words. Madeline Carter, her older sister, was the classic it-girl type: designer dress, glossy high heels, and a booming voice that made every room feel like her personal stage. She was praised by their mother for knowing how to communicate, adored by their father for being radiant like sunshine. Meanwhile, Evelyn, with her low-bun beige sweater and old watch, was always labeled as too soft for her own good. At 31, Evelyn had learned how to become invisible within her own family. She wasn't the attention grabber. She didn't have interesting stories to tell at the table. No flashy trips or cheering crowds. To them, she was just an aimless IT freelancer, living in a tiny apartment in Atlanta, where even the neighbors didn't know her name. Yet her silence wasn't weakness. It was the result of years of choice. As a child, she had raised her hand in class, won first place in the state-level STEM competition, but at home those achievements were buried under the spotlight of the modern dance trophy Madeline had won. She remembered clearly, at age 13, when she handed her mother the first sketch of a video game she had designed. Her mother merely smiled. "Your sister danced beautifully today. Did you see?" Gradually, Evelyn stopped sharing. She began to love the digital world, where everything ran on logic, without emotion or favoritism. She loved lines of code the way others loved music, because in them, no one judged her for not standing out. Once at 22, Evelyn was offered a six-figure job by a major tech company in Austin, but the night before she was supposed to leave, Madeline cried over a breakup. The family canceled Evelyn's farewell dinner to console the older sister. Evelyn wasn't hurt, but she didn't forget. Incidents like that happened enough for her to understand. In this family, the spotlight always pointed in one direction. Instead of resisting, Evelyn chose to quietly build her future. She didn't post achievements on social media. She didn't talk about the million-dollar projects she was working on with healthcare data firms in New York or banks in San Francisco. She just kept working. She learned that value didn't require recognition. What she needed was freedom, not applause. Modern society often misinterprets success. They think success must be viral, must be a glow-up, must have main character energy. But for Evelyn, success was being able to look at herself in the mirror and smile without needing to post a story to confirm it to anyone. During that breakfast, when Madeline's laughter echoed once again, Evelyn stayed silent. But deep inside, she quietly thought, "One day, you'll step into a room illuminated by the very lines of code I wrote. And even if you don't recognize me, I will still be the one who built the foundation beneath your feet." Evelyn's story wasn't a tragedy. It was a journey of quiet strength by someone who understood. Sometimes you don't need to win against anyone. You just need not to lose yourself. In a world that's too loud, the one who chooses to build in silence is the one who's truly powerful. A few months after that brunch, Evelyn Carter still kept her usual pace of life, partly because she liked the quiet, partly because it was the perfect disguise. No one in the family asked more about her job, nor did anyone really care what she was building or how she was living. In truth, Evelyn didn't need them to ask. She knew exactly what was growing silently in the shadows where they'd never look, a tech empire taking shape, and she was the one who had designed its foundation line by line. It all started when she was 27. Back then, she and her co-founder, Marcus Hale, sat in an empty room in Midtown Atlanta, with just 2 old laptops, a whiteboard, and 3 cups of cheap coffee. They used to joke that if the company failed, they could at least open a cafe called Late Night Debug. But instead of collapsing, their idea exploded into a data analytics system capable of predicting user behavior in real time, a breakthrough product that made financial institutions, healthcare systems, and even government agencies sit down just to understand the technology Evelyn had invented. Evelyn didn't choose the spotlight. From the beginning, she and Marcus agreed. Only one of them would appear publicly, and the other, her, would stand behind every decision, every strategy, and every line of code running as smoothly as the system's heartbeat. In every pitch meeting, Marcus was the one in the suit, presenting, flashing a charming smile at investors. And Evelyn? She was the one typing the final command before the deadline, the one who didn't sleep for 72 hours straight to fix system bugs before launch, and the one who knew exactly where to upgrade, where to optimize. Once Marcus asked her during a private meeting, "Eve, are you sure? If you go public, the media will explode over a female engineer leading a tech revolution. You could become a symbol right now." Evelyn just shook her head. "I don't need to be a symbol. I need to be the foundation." It wasn't false humility. It was an intentional choice. Evelyn had seen too many people lose their privacy, their ability to live like normal human beings, just for the sake of recognition. To her, autonomy was more precious than any spotlight. And more than anything, she liked observing the world from behind, because from there she could clearly see who was genuine and who was just performing. 3 years after writing the first line of code, the company named Neurolynx Analytics was valued at $92 million during its Series B funding round. Evelyn held 48% of the shares, never appeared in any public documentation. She was E. Carter internally, a signature, an ID, an invisible power that none of the 200 employees had ever seen. She remembered vividly the moment she received an email from a major bank in Chicago. "Thank you to the Neurolynx technical team. Your system helped us stop a data breach in just 47 seconds." Evelyn read the email in the dim light of her apartment, brewed herself a cup of tea, then opened her laptop and continued coding. No champagne, no selfie-flaunting success, just a single thought running through her mind. This is what I was made to do. Sometimes on rainy nights, Evelyn would replay the video of her and Marcus from their first brainstorming session. 2 people, 1 crazy idea, and 1 dream, to create a tech system that could foresee the future without needing personal data. They didn't want to build a user surveillance empire. They wanted to build a tool that helped organizations make smart decisions while respecting privacy, something that seemed impossible in the age of clickbait and algorithm addiction. Evelyn didn't need many people to know who she was, but she knew for sure every line of code she wrote was protecting millions, was making the world operate smarter and fairer, little by little. In her heart, she always carried a question. If people found out who I am tomorrow, would they treat me differently? But then she smiled again, because the truth was, she didn't need to know the answer, because sometimes success doesn't lie in being celebrated. It lies in knowing you've silently helped change the world, with your own hands, your own mind, and a heart brave enough to dream big without needing anyone's permission. On an ordinary Monday morning like any other, while Evelyn was sitting in her apartment on the 21st floor of a building in Midtown Atlanta, next to her was a steaming cup of chamomile tea and her laptop screen fully expanded with 3 active system windows. A small notification popped up in the bottom corner. New applicant received, position, financial budget analyst. She didn't think much of it. It was just part of her routine, reviewing job applications, ensuring the right candidates moved on to the interview round. But when her eyes scanned the name on the top line, Evelyn's heartbeat froze as if the world had stopped for a few seconds. Applicant name, Madeline Carter. No way. Evelyn sat up straight and pushed her chair back. Her hand rested on the mouse but didn't move it. In that moment, everything came rushing back like a cinematic flashback. The mocking laughter at brunch, her sister's condescending gaze, the words, "life sabbatical." And now, the very person who once laughed in her face was knocking on the door of the empire she had silently built for years. She took a deep breath. No emotions. This was work. The selection system was built using AI to analyze skills, compatibility scores, and learning capacity. And Evelyn had written it herself. And in the internal report, Madeline, with her financial experience from mid-sized firms and a personality rating of confident and communicative, had passed the initial round with a decent score. Part of her wanted to laugh out loud at the irony. Another part felt oddly relieved, not because her sister needed her, but because in this passive position, Evelyn could finally see the real Madeline, Not through social media, not through family dinners, but through the way she worked. The following week, Madeline was invited to an online interview. Evelyn monitored silently through the internal system. No one in the company knew that Carter was watching. Madeline showed up on time, hair neatly tied back, wearing a plain blazer, no longer the flashy girl on Instagram with the number sign #BossBabe hashtag. Her answers were coherent, slightly boastful, but solid, especially when asked, "Why do you want to work at Neurolynx?" The answer made Evelyn freeze. "Because I've grown too used to the spotlight. Now I want to know what it feels like to build something real, without the applause." Evelyn didn't know if that answer was sincere or just a clever way to impress, but it made her sit quietly for a moment, then click the button. Forward to final round. 3 days later, Madeline received her offer letter. She had no idea that the person who approved it was the very invisible little sister she had once dismissed. Evelyn didn't say anything to Marcus. No need. Between them was an unspoken agreement. Work is work. No one interferes with the other's decision. The day Madeline started was a bright, sunny morning. Evelyn followed her usual schedule, staying home. She turned on the internal monitoring system, a security feature she had personally designed, accessible only to the executive team. In the low-angle camera frame at the 9th floor pantry, Madeline appeared, walking in slowly, looking around, her eyes showing a hint of surprise as she read the project boards. She didn't know that the walls, the ceiling, the lighting system, even the software running quietly behind it all, were the result of years Evelyn spent on her so-called life sabbatical. That afternoon, Marcus called via video. He laughed when he saw her. "Guess who joined the circus today?" Evelyn squinted. "Let me guess. The firework?" "Bingo." Marcus chuckled, then turned serious. "She's got potential, but you sure about this?" Evelyn nodded. "Let her prove herself, without knowing I'm watching." She didn't want revenge. She didn't need an apology. She just wanted to know. Without the spotlight, who would Madeline become? Without the attention, without applause, could her sister truly contribute, or was she still just someone who lived for the gaze of others? In the days that followed, Evelyn worked as usual, still coding, still reviewing documents. But in every report submitted from the finance department, she began to see Madeline's name, accompanied by positive feedback from other teams. A small change, but enough to make Evelyn start believing in one thing. Maybe, not everyone needs to know who you are. Maybe sometimes recognition doesn't come when you step into the light, but when the very people who once denied you begin to walk into the light you've created. And Evelyn was willing to wait a little longer, not for the applause, but to see if this time her sister would learn how to light her own way. 4 weeks after Madeline officially joined Neurolynx, Evelyn began to notice the signs she had quietly hoped for and quietly feared. At first, it was just notes in the budget department's reports, a request to verify approval authority from someone with the internal code EC-01, a few emails CC'd to E.Carter-Senior Technical Oversight. Then, one late Friday afternoon, when the entire office was nearly empty, a notification appeared in the security system. Access request, founding documents, initiated by M. Carter. Evelyn stared at the screen, gently biting her lower lip. She knew this would come. She knew someone like Madeline, used to controlling every conversation, wouldn't easily ignore a vague name that appeared everywhere important. The last time they had run into each other was a week ago, in the 10th floor elevator. Madeline was on her phone, and Evelyn had just left a meeting room. Their eyes met for a second, but only Evelyn gave a slight nod. Madeline didn't react, just turned away, like so many times during their years growing up together. And now, her sister had touched the truth. Evelyn left her desk and walked into the basement server room, a place she often went to think more clearly. No one except Marcus and a few senior technicians were allowed there. But that day, when the door opened, Evelyn froze. Madeline was standing at the end of the hallway, arms holding a stack of documents printed from the internal system. The ceiling lights cast down on her face, both confused and angry at once. When she saw Evelyn, she took a step back, as if seeing a ghost. "Evelyn?" she asked, her voice low. "I've been searching this name all week. Is it really you?" Evelyn slowly stepped forward and nodded. "I didn't intend to hide it forever. It just wasn't the right time." Madeline raised the paper, her hands trembling. You, you're the co-founder from the start? This name is in every financial record, every license, every system protocol. Why, why didn't you ever say anything? Evelyn exhaled. Because you never asked. Or rather, you never thought I had anything worth asking about. There was no resentment in her voice, just a truth, spoken coldly and quietly like a key turning in a door that had stayed shut for far too long. Madeline was silent, but her eyes weren't sharp anymore. She looked at Evelyn, not like a dismissed little sister, but like someone she'd never truly known. And that was the biggest shock of all. So, all this time, you were the one approving my contracts, the one signing off every budget decision? Madeline asked, her eyes red. Evelyn nodded. You're capable, and I don't let emotion interfere with work. If you weren't good enough, I wouldn't have let you past round 2. Madeline laughed, but it was the kind of laugh worn down by fatigue. I used to think you were someone going nowhere, Evelyn. Just a girl who liked playing with computers, hiding from real life. But turns out, you're the entire system. Evelyn didn't laugh. She simply pulled a printed sheet from her pocket, a budget proposal for a new digital education project aimed at rural students. If you want it, this project needs a lead financial planner, and I think you'd do well. Madeline didn't take it right away. She just looked at the paper like she was seeing a world she never imagined her sister had created. No one said anything else. Evelyn left first, leaving her sister standing in the cold hallway. But inside, for the first time in years, she felt something strange. Relief. 3 days later, during an internal meeting, Evelyn happened to walk past a glass-walled conference room and saw Madeline presenting a new budget plan for the project. She spoke more slowly, without showing off, without making jokes. And when a young employee asked about a number, Madeline didn't get annoyed like she once would have. She explained clearly, then encouraged them to check the supplementary data chart. Evelyn stood still. In that moment, she saw the sister she had once hoped existed. Not the one who always had to win every contest, but the one who knew how to listen, to respect, to change. And Evelyn realized, the truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to exist. And when it reveals itself at the right time, it can change not just hearts, but the future of relationships once thought to be broken. That Sunday, the sunlight was gentle, the soft golden kind of autumn in Atlanta, quiet and warm like a friendly shoulder tap after cold days. Evelyn walked into the familiar brunch spot on the corner of Greenfern Avenue, the bell above the door chiming softly. Nothing had changed. The old wooden walls, cream-colored tablecloths, the clinking sound of spoons on plates, and the smell of baked cinnamon waffles filling the room. But one thing had changed. Her. And she knew it the moment she stepped up to the long, familiar table where her family was sitting. Madeline arrived a few minutes late, as usual, but there were no sparkling high heels or tight red dresses. Instead, she wore a simple white blouse, dark jeans, and had her hair tied back. Her face wore no makeup, just a tired but honest expression. Evelyn saw a different Madeline. Not the Miss Spotlight who once mocked her, but a woman who was beginning to relearn how to be present, not to attract attention, but to listen. When Madeline pulled out her chair and sat down beside Evelyn, their eyes met. No words, just a small nod. But Evelyn understood. In that silence, something had been repaired. The meal went on like usual. Their mother talked about her new flower bed. Their father mentioned the neighbor who just bought a new car. Evelyn sat quietly, occasionally nodding, giving a soft smile. She no longer tried to join in, and she didn't need to. She had found her own space, and it no longer depended on the recognition of those around her. Until a comment brought the whole table to a pause. Evelyn, Uncle Henry suddenly spoke up, half curious, half teasing. What are you doing these days? Still freelancing from home, or still tapping away at some, code? A thin silence swept over. Evelyn smiled. She was used to this kind of question. Not ill-intentioned, but superficial. But before she could answer, a voice rang out, firm and clear. Uncle, Madeline said, placing her coffee cup down. Evelyn is the smartest person I've ever known, and if it weren't for her, I wouldn't have the job I have now. The whole table froze. Evelyn turned. Madeline didn't look away like she used to. She held her head high, looking straight into Uncle Henry's eyes, and the whole family's. Evelyn isn't the kind of person who stands on stage, but she built a system that people use every day. She did what most people only dream of, and she didn't need to post it on Facebook, didn't need hashtags or 1,000 likes to prove it. A long silence followed. Evelyn held her breath. Then her mother gently reached out, placed a hand over hers, and gave it a soft squeeze. Her father, who usually avoided emotional complexity, simply gave a slight nod. Uncle Henry said nothing more, but no one brought up the old question again. Evelyn looked at Madeline once more. In those eyes, there was no more competition, no pity, just acknowledgement. Something Evelyn hadn't expected, but now received, not through an apology, but through action. The meal continued as if nothing had changed, but Evelyn knew everything had. After the meal, as everyone stood to leave, Madeline walked over, jacket in hand, eyes looking down. Then she leaned in and quietly said, just loud enough for Evelyn to hear, "You don't have to forgive me, but I won't ever be the same person again." Evelyn smiled gently, for the first time with her whole heart. "You don't need to apologize. I never waited for that. I just needed to be seen." They left the restaurant in silence. But this time, it wasn't the heavy kind. It was the space of a relationship being rebuilt, through understanding, through things unspoken but deeply felt. That afternoon back home, Evelyn brewed a pot of tea, opened her laptop, and looked out the window toward the city center. Her phone buzzed softly. A message from Marcus. "Heard brunch had a little surprise?" She smiled and typed back, "Let's just call it a quiet breakthrough." And sometimes, Evelyn thought, a well-timed acknowledgement, not flashy, not dramatic, carries more weight than 1,000 apologies. It is that moment when someone who once denied you now stands up for you. Not to please you, but because they've truly seen who you are. Madeline never responded to the message in the notebook that Evelyn had quietly sent through the internal delivery system. No email, no phone call, no word of thanks. But Evelyn wasn't waiting either, because deep down she knew real, profound change never comes announced by words. It often arrives in the smallest details, and those very small things had started to appear. One Wednesday afternoon, like any other, Evelyn left her office to get some water. As she passed by the auxiliary meeting room on the 6th floor, she stopped. Through the frosted glass, she saw Madeline standing and presenting, but not with exaggerated expressions, no longer with the familiar main character tone. She was speaking just enough clearly, pointing to a budget expenditure chart, explaining each number carefully. A young intern sat beside her taking notes, a little clumsy, hesitantly raising their hand mid-presentation. "Sorry, Ms. Madeline, I don't understand the contingency allocation part. Could you explain it again?" A year ago, Madeline might have laughed or dodged or brushed off the question, but today she simply nodded and turned back to the slide. "No problem," she said gently. "I used to get that part wrong in my first project too. Let's walk through it again from the top." Evelyn stood there for a while, didn't step in, didn't say a word. She just quietly smiled. The following week, the HR department submitted a new proposal, an internal mentorship program for female interns in the tech field. The goal? Empower professional development, increase advancement opportunities, and spark confidence in a high-pressure technical environment. Program name: Touch the Screen, Touch the Future. Initiator: Evelyn Carter. Final note at the end of the file, in italics: inspired by the quiet mission of Eleanor Carter. Evelyn read it 3 times, unable to believe her eyes. Not because she was surprised, but because there was no bitterness left in her heart, only a deep and peaceful feeling, as if after so many years of waiting for a door to open, it had finally creaked open with the wind. Madeline had never said the words, "I'm sorry," but she was letting her actions speak. Since that brunch, the 2 sisters didn't talk often. They didn't become the type of siblings who shared everything each night. There were no tearful hugs, no reunited photos posted on social media to showcase reconciliation. But Evelyn realized sometimes closeness doesn't have to be loud. It can simply be knowing that someone is trying, and you choose not to push them away. Once, while stepping into the common lounge, Evelyn saw a tech book on the table with a sticky note on the cover. Eve, can I borrow this for a week? M.A. short line, but the first time Madeline had called her by the nickname only truly close people used. Evelyn didn't write a response. She just gave a small nod, left the book exactly where it was, like a silent agreement. A month later, Neurolynx held its first workshop for the mentorship program. Evelyn hadn't intended to attend. As usual, she avoided events that required public presence. But this time, she came. Not on stage, not giving a speech. Just sitting at the back of the room, laptop in hand, listening to mentors speak, watching the eager eyes of second-year students stepping into the tech world. When it was Madeline's turn to speak, she stepped up with her hair in a low bun, a light blue blouse, and a voice no longer trembling like on her first day at Neurolynx. Back then, she said, I thought success meant always being applauded, being the one who gets the most attention in the room. But I've learned that there are people who quietly build the very foundations of the world we live in, without anyone ever seeing them. And sometimes, they're the ones who change the game. The whole room fell silent. A brief, peaceful moment, like a quiet breath of truth finally acknowledged. Evelyn didn't say a word. She just looked at Madeline, the sister who once made her feel invisible, now using her voice to inspire those who were once just like her. And inside Evelyn, something old dissolved, as light as a breeze. No hug needed. No, I'm sorry. Just the ability to see each other. Truly see. The gala celebrating the 5th anniversary of Neurolynx was held at a glass building by the shore of Lake Lanier, where crystal chandeliers reflected down onto the white marble floor like shimmering ripples of water. Evelyn didn't know what made her agree to attend. Maybe it was because Marcus had said, "You're no longer behind the curtain, Eve. This isn't just our story anymore. It's a journey people deserve to know who paved the way." The dress she wore that evening was a simple design. Pitch black, hugging her frame, neither flashy nor ostentatious. Her hair was neatly pinned at the nape of her neck, a few strands left loose like a quiet statement that she would step into the light, but still be herself. Marcus came to her backstage, adjusting the collar of his suit. Ready? Evelyn swallowed gently, whispered, I'm not sure. He smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. You're not stepping into the spotlight, you're stepping into your story. When the MC announced their names, the applause rose like a wave. Marcus stepped out first, speaking about the journey from a shabby rented room to a data analytics system now used by major banks and healthcare organizations every day. Then he turned to Evelyn, handing her the microphone. All eyes turned to her. Hi, everyone, Evelyn began, her voice steady and low. I'm Evelyn Carter, and perhaps for many of you, this is the first time you've ever seen me. A soft chuckle rippled through the crowd, not mocking, but friendly, accepting. For many years, I chose to work in silence, not because I was afraid, but because I believed that being useful didn't have to be loud. But today, I want to say thank you. Not for the applause, but for the people who made Neurolynx a place I'm proud to call home. She looked down at the audience. In the very last row, Madeline was standing, one hand holding an untouched glass of champagne, the other resting gently over her chest. Her sister's face showed no awe, just eyes full of emotion, as if, for the first time, she was truly seeing her. After the ceremony, Evelyn sought a quiet corner on the balcony where the city lights reflected off the lake like a silent galaxy. The sounds of laughter and chatter from inside echoed like fragments of memories that no longer belonged to her. She was about to head back when a familiar voice came from behind. This view really is beautiful. Evelyn turned around. Madeline stood there, in a navy blue dress, the breeze tossing a few loose strands of hair over her shoulder. No makeup, no jewelry, just sincerity. I thought you'd disappear right after your speech, she said softly. Evelyn smiled, light as a breath. You thought wrong. Madeline stepped closer, stood beside her. A long silence passed between them. No tension, no unspoken comparisons. Eve, Madeline spoke. I spent years trying to be the one everyone noticed. But the moment you stopped trying to be seen, you became the one no one could ignore. Evelyn didn't respond. She simply placed her hand on the railing, eyes looking out into the distance. I'm not going to ask if you forgive me, Madeline continued, because I think you never carried resentment. You just carried the silence, and that hurts even more. Another pause, but this time it was Evelyn who broke it. It's not that you didn't hurt me, Madeline, but I think what made me saddest was that I had stopped hoping for you. Madeline turned, her eyes slightly red. And now? Evelyn nodded softly. Now I see you're truly trying. And for me, that's enough. No hugs needed. No tears. They stood side by side, looking out over the city, where they had once passed each other by, now learning to walk side by side. A few days later, at the Neurolynx office, Evelyn passed by the recognition wall, the display honoring outstanding individual contributions each quarter. She paused. Under the name Evelyn Carter was a small line, printed in italics, for redefining leadership through growth and humility. Evelyn smiled, not out of pride, but because finally they had stepped out of a race no one had ever asked them to run. They were no longer two sisters standing at opposite poles, the spotlight and the shadows, but two women who had learned the most important lesson. Family isn't about standing out. It's about choosing to see each other every day, even if only in silence.